Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
We're going to be looking at the book of Hebrews.
Chapter 9, beginning at verse 27. Just as man is destined to die once, and after that to face judgment. Hebrews chapter 9, 27. Verse 28. So Christ was sacrificed once to take away the sins of many people. And he will appear a second time, not to bear sin, but to bring salvation to those who are waiting for him. The law is only a shadow of the good things that are coming, not the realities themselves. For this reason, it can never, by the same sacrifices repeated endlessly, year after year, make perfect those who draw near to worship. If it could, would they not have stopped being offered? For the worshippers would have been cleansed once for all, and would no longer have felt guilty for their sins. But those sacrifices are an annual reminder of sins, because it is impossible for the blood of bulls and goats to take away sins. Therefore, when Christ came into the world, he said, now this is a quote from King David, "Sacrifice and offering you did not desire, but a body you prepared for me. With burnt offerings and sin offerings you were not pleased. Then I said, here am I. It is written about me in the scroll. I have come to do your will, O God." First he said, sacrifices and offerings, burnt offerings and sin offerings you did not desire, nor were you pleased with them, although the law required them to be made. Then he said, here am I have come to do your will. He sets aside the first to establish the second. And by that will, we have been made holy through the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all. Communion is a reminder that Jesus died once and for all. Just as a person expects to live their life and to die, and then the judgment, so too Christ came and lived his life, and it was cut short, and he died. But unlike others, on the third day he was raised from the dead. The Jewish people had a way to deal with sins. It was the sacrificial system. It was not a system designed to deal with a nation that was in utter rebellion. For if they went into utter rebellion, they could be removed from the land. And they were, eventually. But it was a means by which people understood that to come near to God in a way that no other people on the planet could come near, there needed to be a recognition of sin and earthliness. And so God annually, once a year, would have the day called Yom Kippur. And Yom Kippur, they would prepare for 10 days. They would read the scriptures, they would give alms, they'd make right wrongs they had done with their neighbors, they would offer sacrifices, they would often fast. And during this time, they would be building up to the day when the high priest would be allowed to go into the Holy of Holies only once a year. And in that Holy of Holies, he would bring blood and bring smoke and offer the blood of bulls and goats. And so what we see is this was done year after year after year. Even to this day, it's the holiest day of Israel. It's a day when generally there's no cars on the road. People stay home. Even the secular people respect it. But the Hebrew writer's pointing out here is that if this celebration, if it could bring an ultimate cleansing of Israel, why do you have to do it every year? Why do you have to do it every year? Why couldn't it just be done and be over with? Why every year? His point was this thing will never bring Israel to a place where ultimately her sin is dealt with. If it could, you'd get to the place where it's over, but it's not over. We'll be back here next year. Therefore, this celebration, though it's a time of Israel being forgiven for its previous year, it is actually a reminder. It is a reminder of sin. And it plays a great role in this. It's like having a birthday, but at your birthday, your mom points out your past mistake. It's a very odd birthday, but that you're forgiven. It would be like celebrating something while at the same time you're getting a finger poked in your eye. Boom. But I want to let you know you're forgiven for what you did. Yom Kippur was to celebrate God's forgiveness of Israel's past rebellion. It's assumed that she will have rebellion. And so it's not assumed that it's like, well, if you have rebellion, we'll do it. No, it's like, no. This is what you'll do every year. Because it's assumed you will have rebellion. You will have rebellion. You will have need for cleansing. You will have need to get right with certain issues. So it's a day that everyone's excited about because it's a day when it's like a new year. It's like a new year. It's a year when you're cleansed from your previous sins. Israel has 2 New Years. It has another one in Passover where you're a new year in the sense of freedom from Gentile oppression. Passover. That would be equivalent to like a July 4th or July 1st for Canada. Though ours is different. In the sense that ours wasn't so much against an oppressor. In their minds it was. Yom Kippur, it was also, though, a symbol of their rebellion at Mount Sinai when they worshipped a calf god. And God's thought is, if I can forgive you when you worship a calf god, I can forgive what this generation did last year. It's also a reminder of the sin of refusing to go into the land and fight the giants, a lack of faith. And so there was 2 goats on that day, and one went out in the wilderness and simply was handed over into the wilderness, never to come back, and would die in the wilderness. And that's what happened to that generation. That generation died in the wilderness because they refused to fight the giants. And so once a year, God would remind of the 2 great sins of Israel, the rebellion at Mount Sinai and the rebellion to fight the giants. But it came with the thought, but I forgive you. But I forgive you. And if I can forgive Israel for what they did at Mount Sinai, and if I could forgive the generation that rebelled against me and said that I hated them and wouldn't fight the giants, then I can forgive you for your past year. That's the thought. And so it's an exciting thing that you can be forgiven, but it's poke every single year. As the Hebrew writer writes, he says, Yom Kippur was a reminder of sin. And not just your personal sin. It was a reminder of the sin of the nation in the past on its worst days. Why is this so important? I could imagine looking to something like Yom Kippur and saying, it doesn't fully satisfy God. Because I know next year you're going to bring up that issue again. Now many of you have done things that probably you're not really thrilled about. And it would be difficult for you and I to know that on an appointed day, every year, we have to talk about it. For how long? Until you die. Every year. Once a year. we're going to talk about it. And God, why do we have to talk about it? Why can't you let that go? And the thought is, I have forgiven you in the sense that I am not destroying you. I am blessing you. I'm moving forward. But the blood of bulls and goats cannot ultimately remove sin. So we're going to talk about it. And so there's a sense in which your conscience isn't cleansed. It's not cleansed. Now the Hebrew people often, they see this as an opportunity to experience the mercy and forgiveness of God, Yom Kippur. And they do. But this writer points out a truth that sometimes is missed, which is it can't ultimately cleanse your conscience, because we're going to talk about it each and every year. And there's no mention of it ever coming to an end. It's forever. But then God gives David a prophetic word. And he says something that's most interesting. He says, sacrifice and offerings you did not desire. God, your law demands them. Your law demands them. You're the one who said, I want sacrifices. Don't come to me without sacrifice. How can you not desire something that you commanded? I liken it to FaceTiming. I look forward to FaceTiming. We get to FaceTime about twice a week, I think. Is that right, Sharon? About twice a week?
About once a week, yeah.
Once or twice a week, yeah. Sometimes twice. Most of the time, perhaps once. And I look forward to it. And I'm not the person who could demand that our children FaceTime us, but they know what my desire is that they would do it. And so when they do it, we're thrilled. Get to see our grandson and our granddaughter and my son and his wife. It's just a happy thing. It's a happy thing. And so I love it. But after a while, if I haven't seen them for a while, I don't desire it. I want something more. Even though I wish and I tell them, please FaceTime. Please FaceTime. Please, Israel, bring the sacrifices. But ultimately, it does not ultimately satisfy God. God has a better plan. And I have a better plan than FaceTiming. It's getting in my car with my wife and driving there. And throwing them in the air and playing with them and having him run away from me, telling me, mine, 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 mine. And trying to share the train with him or whatever it is. It's just fun. So God, on the one hand, says, sacrifice and offerings you did not desire. But if you read the Old Testament, there's over 500 times that he did desire. But there's one prophetic word where he says, I don't. Like, God, how can you say you desire something 500 times and then all of a sudden say you don't? Because on most days, if you ask me, do you like FaceTiming? I would say yes. But there'll be those moments where I'm tired of it. I want to get in my car and I want to go see him and feel him and toss him and play with him. And I don't desire FaceTime. Enough of that. I want the real thing. And that's how God feels about Jesus. I desire sacrifices because they were a shadow of a reality to come. And FaceTime is a shadow of a reality. Sometimes my grandson actually tries to reach into our phone to get things I'm showing him. Because he hasn't quite understood. It is a shadow of a reality. To him, it's almost reality. And if we're not careful, we can make this mistake. And Israel was starting to see that this was a reality. This is not reality. The reality will be when God finally brings your sin to a final conclusion. Where he doesn't point and kind of poke you in the eye and remind you what you did in the past. But rather is willing to remember your sins no more. And there will not be annual festivals. of sacrifice in heaven. I'm going to remember your sins no more. No more. Because I have a plan. My plan is that someone comes and he dies once for all. It says, sacrifice and offerings you did not desire, but a body prepared for me. We should be thankful for the sacrificial system. I would liken it to a person who, maybe a lady who had her husband go to war. I had relatives who went to war. I remember one of them, he told me that he hadn't seen his son for 5 years. There was no FaceTime in those days, in those World War II. He fought in Burma. And he hadn't seen his oldest boy, John. He saw him when he was 1. The next time he saw him, he was 6. And John ran away from him. He just didn't know who his father was. It was very difficult. But John wrote letters. They didn't all get back because some of the ships that had the letters got sunk. Some of the planes got blown out of the sky. But most letters got back to England. He was from England, from Scotland. And his wife loved the letters. No doubt, she loved the letters. And you would never hear her probably say something like, don't send me any more letters. She'd want letters. Because they are a shadow of a reality. And the reality is you're alive, how you doing, miss you. Da, 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 da. But no doubt there would be days where she would think of a letter and say, I am tired of letters. They weary me. I want this crazy war to end and I want my husband home so he can be with me and with our son. This is how God speaks in the Bible. When God, on the one hand, he speaks well of something because it's speaking of in shadows of a great reality. But even God can lose patience and wants the reality. And David's words speak of this reality. Sacrifice and offerings you did not desire. This was not your ultimate desire. Your ultimate goal was not the blood of bulls and goats, surely, God. Or you would have forgiven Israel and not poked at their sin every single year, though it came with forgiveness. But a body you prepared for me. The interesting thing is with this quote, in the Hebrew, it's not a body prepared for me, it's ears you dug out. Ears you dug out. That's the Hebrew. But that makes no sense to a Greek, a Hellenistic person. They don't know what that means. In the Bible, dug out ears versus stopped up ears is the difference between someone who obeys and disobeys. When you stop up your ears, God says, you're not listening to me. When Stephen was crying out his prophetic word in his martyrdom, they didn't like what he was saying because he said he saw the Son of Man at the right hand, standing at the right hand. And so they put their thumbs and they shoved them into their ears and screamed so they would not hear another word before they crushed him with stones. They physically stopped up their ears. David says, you've given me a dug out ears. Meaning you've given me ears that hear. Sacrifice is one thing. Obedience, ultimately, is what you want, God. And you've granted that in my life. Some men bring goats, but I bring obedience. I come with a broken, contrite heart. I come with a desire to do your will, oh God. The interesting thing is dug out ears is symbolized in the Old Testament. Because if you were a slave, and your time of being a slave was over, your 7 years were up, you could leave. You were free. And your master would give you a whole bunch of wealth as if you had never worked for free. He is to give you a full 6 years' pay when you decide to leave. It's up to you. But if you love your master and you want to stay and serve him for the rest of your life, you can offer your ear and they will punch a hole through it. A big hole. And they'll keep it big so that everyone can see that that is a man dedicated to his master, to obey his master for life. It symbolizes a person who has dug out ears for his master. You don't do both sides, you just do one because it hurts. Just do the right side. And you pound a hole through it and you keep it there. This is the way you prepared a body of service. When you looked at this person and you saw that he had this lobe that had a huge hole in it, you knew he has a body prepared to obey his master right to the end of days. And so this phrase, dug out ears, actually also is an idiom that comes from the Torah, where if someone wants to serve God in obedience, they can actually symbolically prepare their body. And the way that you prepare your body, you would symbolize this by punching a hole through the lobe. Obviously not through the ear, but through the lobe. It's a beautiful way of doing it. The rabbis understood this, and so they translated it, not dug out the ears, but they translated into the Greek Septuagint, which is quoted here, a Greek translation. They translated it by the phrase, but a body prepared for me. Because otherwise people go, I don't know what dug out ears imply. Languages don't often shift well. In David's day, no doubt this phrase referred to two things. A, it's like, I am here to serve you for the rest of my life. I'll use this idiom. You are the Lord, I am your servant. I gladly obey you. This is more important to you than sacrifice and offerings. Then it says, with burnt offerings and sin offerings, you were not pleased. Again, in the end, these things ultimately do not satisfy. But what you do want, it says, then I said, here am I, it is written about me in the scroll. You know, there are very few people that can say that they're written about in the Bible. There's very few. Cyrus the Great is one of them. Jesus is another. Judas Iscariot is another. King David is another. Where they're actually, the Bible talks about them. And so when David was writing his Psalms, knew that the Torah knew about him, wrote about him 400 years before. It says, then I said, here am I, it is written about me in the scroll. For example, in Genesis chapter 49, it says, the scepter shall come from Judah. David knows he's from Judah. First king of Israel wasn't. He was from Benjamin. He is the first great king of Israel. He is from Judah. Secondly, a star of Jacob will come in book of Numbers. And that star will take out the nations of Moab and Edom. That's what David did. David is the king who took those nations out 400 years after that prophecy. David was written in the scroll as the king that would bring Israel freedom from her nations. God made a covenant with him and said, I'll put everything under your feet. David would read the Torah, the first 5 books, and in at least 2 places, there's far more than that, but I gave you 2 places he knows, that's about me. Looking back 400 years. But we know from the scriptures that it's not ultimately David, it was the Messiah. The scepter that comes from Judah is not ultimately David. It is the son of David, Jesus of Nazareth, who comes from the line of Judah. And the star of Jacob, star implying a king, it comes from Jacob, that will cause the enemies of Israel to be under their feet. This great shepherd of the sheep that will come. For God will appoint a shepherd. It is not ultimately David. It is Jesus of Nazareth, the good shepherd. It is Jesus of Nazareth that star went from the east and went west. And the Magi followed him. And they said, where is the one born king of the Jews? A star of Jacob in Bethlehem. What is true of David is true of Jesus. Jesus knows that God prepared him a body that he would offer, because ultimately God cannot find satisfaction in the blood of bulls and goats. And the reason why God can do this is because Jesus is obedient. He has dug out ears. He does not rebel. He has a body prepared for him. It says, "Here am I. It is written about me in the scroll." And Jesus has hundreds of places in the Old Testament that are written about him. Where David has many, Jesus has myriads. And what we see here in this passage is it says, "Then I said, here I am. It is written about me in the scroll. I have come to do your will, O God." What is the will of God that Jesus is going to do? He is going to come as a babe. He is going to have a body prepared for him. That is, through the incarnation, through, of course, Mary. He is going to live an obedient life, a life where his ears are clearly dug out, not stopped up. And he's going to lay down his life for the sheep. It says in verse 10, it says, "And by that will we have been made holy through the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once and for all." There is only one incarnation, Jesus. Only one person can be God and take on human nature. And that was prepared for him, in the sense that it was God's will that he would take on a human nature, live a completely obedient life. Why? Because ultimately the blood of bulls and goats cannot take away sins. But the blood of Jesus can. We should be thankful for the letters that God's written us. We should be thankful for the FaceTime, so to speak, that he gave us. That in all of the letters and all the FaceTime and all the prophecy and all of the patterns and all the things that help us understand, God says, don't miss the reality. It is in Jesus. This is where I don't poke you with my finger in your eye and remind you on a daily, especially annual basis, I will remember their sins no more. I will remember their sins no more. Awesome?